our speakers. Yeah.
Hi, we would like to welcome Margery and Joanne. Both are master gardeners with extensive knowledge, experience, and contributions to our community. Joanne's favorite quote is, "There are no mistakes in gardening, only experiments." And Margery's favorite quote is, "The garden is not a place, it's a journey." We look forward to taking a journey now with them on how to win against those garden pests. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Judith. So vegetables versus pests. We, of course, have many different kinds of vegetables, and each one has its own pest. So we're going to be sharing the lessons that we have learned. There are actually four of us that are involved with managing this full circle garden. Joanne is our pest management guru, and I'm just kind of do kind of everything. So the full circle garden started about 14 years ago at the same time that the food pantry started. And the goal was to grow vegetables specifically for the food pantry so that food pantry recipients would have fresh, organic, locally grown food. So we start early in April. Yes, we do plant in the ice and the snow, and we are growing until November when the squashes finally are ready to be sent to the pantry. We last year grew about 2,700 pounds of vegetables, and this is all in 50 8 by 4 foot raised beds and 9 15-foot long fences. We use specifically the IPM principles that Joanne is going to be talking about today: succession and companion planting, and daily observation and note-taking. And I would offer, since there's so few people participating, that if you have questions along the way, this would be a change. We were going to do questions at the end, but I would say if you have questions as we're going along, please interrupt. So our objective today is for those of you that are participating to understand what is meant by IPM, or Integrated Pest Management, how to use the pyramid to take actions when planning your garden to prevent problems from the get-go, to detect problems early on, identify and understand pest life cycles, and to use different methods of pest control as according to the IPM pyramid, and understand the IPM pest control by reviewing different strategies with our commonly grown vegetables, which may be different than yours. So the I stands for integrated, meaning that we are using diverse and multiple control methods, that we are dealing with pests of all kinds, diseases, either bacterial, viral, or fungal, insects, animals. It's important to identify the pest, know the life cycle, and know how to monitor the pest. The M stands for management, are taking action, keeping pests below acceptable levels and preventing pests from becoming threats to an entire population of vegetable. So guiding principles. So IPM is specific to your site. Whether you have more wind, less wind, more or less sun, and so forth. What's been in the ground. Have you had a lot of insects that are overwintering? The garden is managed as an ecosystem. It's an interconnected system. The plants are not living alone by themselves, neither are the insects. It's very interconnected. We are supporting organic and sustainable gardening, creating no damage to the environment, and also being aware of protecting the water quality, especially since we are very close to a conservation area. We also are protecting non-target organisms, beneficial insects, pollinators, as well as the humans that we're feeding. So this is the pyramid that you see on the right of your screen. The bottom level is the purple level that you see, the base, and these are just using best gardening practices, starting off ground zero, ground whatever you are at, whatever you landed in, wherever you are at, what can you do to start out with a good clean slate, literally. Next in the pyramid is the detection. Once you've planted something, keeping an eye on what's going on. And then if you see something going on, IDing what the pest is, understanding the life cycle, and then monitoring to determine how detrimental is that pest at that moment. Controlling, this is a lot of the integrated part. The controlling is determining how many insects you have and how many you can manage in different mechanisms, mechanical, biological, or chemical. Choose tactics, take action, and then see if your actions worked. So the prevention component. This is part of our garden. You are seeing the part that is shaded. Yes, we do have a shady part. We cannot grow any of our solanaceous tomatoes, eggplants on this side of the garden. We can grow beans. Lettuce loves it. The peas are fine. We also do have a very sunny part of the garden as well. So replacement of beds is important for your vegetables, and making sure that you have access to water and that you are providing water sufficiently and at the right time, meaning morning is best or late afternoon. That you have little wind and that you have good drainage. You want to make sure that you've done a soil test, that you have the proper pH, that you have enough nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and organic material in your soil. We choose disease-resistant plants and seeds, and in some instances, we use parthenocarpic plant seeds. Parthenocarpic meaning those plants that will grow and will self-germinate, self-pollinate. So we can cover the crop against any insects. Important to rotate crops because so many of the pests are actually in the soil. At least rotating the crops gives the plant a chance at a good start. Planting time is critical. Soil temperature is important to pay attention to. And also just following the directions on the seed packet to prevent disease, to make sure that you have enough spacing, and to get the greatest production. Also, in prevention practices, we make sure that we have flowers growing close to us, actually around us. We have herbs in pots throughout the garden, even though it's a vegetable garden, because we want to create a home for pollinators. We want to support predatory insects. It's important to have natives such as bee balm, asters, milkweed, goldenrod, mountain mint. We also use companion plants that attract beneficials, especially the carrot family in cilantro, dill, fennel, parsley, and basil's also very helpful, more for detracting some of our insects. And Joanne is going to start off talking about planting trap crops in the next section.
Okay, so trap crops are also called decoys. They are sacrificial plants that are grown to attract the pests, and they're grown away from the crop so that they attract the insects that can be destroyed on those plants. So here's an example of something we have in our garden. It's a trap plant. We have a number of these plants that we put around the garden. The curcubit family attracts a lot of different pests, and those are the cucumbers, squash, winter squash, pumpkins. They attract a lot of different beetles. So what we do is we put out plants that those insects will like before we actually plant our crop, and we try to attract those insects to these trap plants. Once they're there, we can see them. We know that they're here. They've arrived, and we can destroy them on the plant. Many times these plants get destroyed because the insects get attracted to them and they damage or cause disease on the plant. But they're sacrificial plants, so keeps them away from our real crop.
And that was a blue Hubbard. Blue Hubbards are the most delicious plant for the squash and cucumber beetles.
Right. We'd never had a blue Hubbard squash produced yet because those plants just are sacrificed. There are additional preventive practices that can be taken. We can interplant to confuse the insects, and that's putting different plants in the same bed. Many times if the insects come over to take a look at the plant, if they land on it, they need to land on it a few times before they feel comfortable laying their eggs or taking a bite out of it. And if they keep landing on plants in that bed and they're landing on different ones, typically they'll go away. We want to also encourage the birds by having a bird bath and some shelter, because those birds are going to be hungry and they're going to be looking for those pests. We also try to avoid overhead watering. Overhead watering wets the leaves and causes a lot of humidity around the plants. And in order to keep the mildews down, we tend to water only at the surface of the soil and direct it toward the roots of the plants. After planting the plants, we mulch to prevent any soil splash up because some of the diseases that we want to prevent are in the soil. And if water splashes onto the soil, it can go up and hit the leaves of the plant and contaminate the leaves of the plant. We also want to sanitize the beds, and that is removing any damaged or diseased plants or any leaves. And we don't want to put them in our compost. We put them in a different compost pile, or they can be sent to regular trash because those diseases persist on those leaves and plants, and we don't want to add that to our compost.
I just want to interject here that this is contradictory to what you've probably heard in regards to encouraging pollinators to overwinter safely. So we want pollinators to overwinter safely, but unfortunately, pollinators or destructive insects have the same habitat. So for our raised beds that you can see here, we do remove the leaves and do take them away and not put in our compost. There are other ways that the insects, many of the insects that are overwintering actually are under the ground. So yes, we do remove the leaves.
Yeah, so another thing that you can see in this picture is we have some raised beds that have some netting over them. And this is netting that we put in to avoid the insects landing on the plants. A lot of times we see the insects trying to get into the netting, but this is a very convenient way and easy way to eliminate them. And this is not the same kind of cloth that you use in the spring to keep spring crops warm. This is netting that is that has very small holes in it. It allows water and almost all the sunlight in. It just eliminates the pests. Okay, once we've done all those preventive steps, then we go up the pyramid to detection. And detection of pests can be done in different ways. One is just careful, frequent monitoring. So you really have to be out in your garden every day if you can to detect changes, either in the way the plants look or you might see some of the pests. Yellow sticky cards is a way of attracting pests. We put out yellow sticky cards early in the season, and sometimes that's the way that we know the pests are in the area. It also can trap the pests so that they don't get attracted to the plant. We put out trap plants, as we described with the Hubbard squash, and we use observation. The next thing we want to do is properly identify the pest. Also understand its life cycle so that you know exactly where it's vulnerable. And you want to monitor the environment to determine the pest level. So how much pest do you have? After detection, once you detect pests, you want to move up to control. And in the control step, you're determining the action threshold. So how many pests are tolerable. Sometimes there are pests and you decide you're not going to do anything about it. You wait until you get to a certain threshold. Choose your tactics, take some kind of action, evaluate your results, and repeat the cycle. In the first level of control, we're moving from the most sustainable to the least sustainable. And that means protecting the environment. In the first step, we use mechanical, physical, and natural means. Some of these are actually used in the prevention step that we've already talked about. So one thing we can do is prune off disease. If you have anthracnose, powdery mildew, or downy mildew, you want to take those leaves or stems off. You want to clean your tools before you use them on healthy plants, though, because your tools will be contaminated and you don't want to spread the disease. You'll want to keep weeds to a minimum because weeds can be used to hide pests, and also they can increase the humidity around your plants. You can use traps, the yellow sticky traps, as I mentioned before, or in the case of some little critters, you might want to use mouse traps. You can use barriers such as insect covers or fences, or you can pick off the insects and squash them or put them in soapy water. So these are all the physical kind of things that you can do before you reach for chemicals. Here again are some pictures of the insect barrier netting that we use. And you can see that in the picture at the top left, the barrier, the insect barrier fits nicely over the beds, but you want to really plan ahead because you can see in the picture in the bottom, those plants have gotten really, really big, and you want to make sure that the netting can fit over the beds once the plants get larger. If the mechanical controls don't work, you can go to the second level of control, which is the biological control. Here you can use parasites or predators like lady beetles, nematodes, or fungus or bacteria. An example of that would be BT, Bacillus thuringiensis. It can be used to eliminate most caterpillars. What happens is the spores of the Bacillus species will damage the gut of the insect. So they've got to eat the plants that has that BT sprayed on it. The one thing you want to do with biological controls and any kind of chemical control is you don't want to kill the beneficials. And the beneficials would be those insects that are predators to the pests, and also bees and other insects that might do your pollination. The third level of control is chemical control. And here we're using biorational controls. That means that they're natural, they're made from natural materials. Always with chemicals, read the label. Every time I use a chemical, even though I've used it many times before, I always read the label to review it again. Use personal protection if that's appropriate. Use the mildest chemical first. For soft-bodied insects, you can use insecticidal soap or horticultural oil. Those both suffocate the insects by closing off the breathing tubes. You can use diatomaceous earth, which is ground up sea creatures. And if you put that on the soil, any kind of crawling insect or slugs, for example, get abrasions and they'll dry out. You can also, for slugs, use iron phosphate, and that causes them to stop feeding and die. There are some slug prevention or killing chemicals that are not appropriate for the garden, and I'll mention that in the end. Or you can use kaolin clay. Kaolin clay is a soft, powdery material that you mix with water to make a slurry, and you can spray it on your plants. When the insects land on the plants, they're confused because the plant doesn't feel the same way and they get annoyed by it. So usually they'll go away. Okay, continuing in the third level of control, the biorational chemicals. For powdery mildew, downy mildew, and blight, these are pests, but they're not insect pests. We will use foliar sprays. And these foliar sprays wash off with rain and need to be reapplied. Copper fungicide is one. It disrupts the cell function in fungus and bacterial spores. Or Bacillus amyloliquefaciens. It produces an antibiotic that destroys the cell membranes of fungal pathogens. And we just started using that in the last couple of years and have found it to be pretty effective. Okay, continuing the third level of control, if those controls don't work or not appropriate, you can go to the chemical. These are biorational chemicals, as I mentioned, they're made from natural materials. So for insect pests, you might use neem oil, which is made from the seed of the neem tree, spinosad, which is made from soil bacteria, or pyrethrin, which is made from mums, the flower mums. Some of these chemicals, however, are toxic to pollinators, as I mentioned earlier. You want to be using them early in the morning or after dusk when the pollinators are not active. Okay, so now we'll go into some examples of some of the more frequently seen pests in the vegetable garden and how we have learned to avoid these pests. So the cucurbits, squash, cucumber, melon, and pests have common pests. The most common are the cucumber beetle, and that will attack all of those. The squash borer and the squash bugs, which will attack squash. Powdery mildew, which loves all of those plants. So we want to properly identify the pests. So if we see this type of pest on any of the cucurbits, these are adult cucumber beetles. They can be spotted or they can be striped. And we want to understand their life cycle. So adults live through the winter in leaf litter. They emerge in late May and early June to lay their eggs. They hatch in the soil for several weeks, and the larvae feed on plant roots. The larvae then transform into pupae and emerge as adults. So looking through the life cycle, we can see that the part of the pest life cycle that we're going to see most frequently is actually going to be the adult beetles. All of the other parts of the life cycle are in the soil and we won't be able to detect or see them. Then you want to monitor. So this is a cucurbit plant that is infested with these cucumber beetles. You can see the adults are feeding on the foliage. And this striped cucumber beetle will also move to feeding on the blossoms and on the pollen. And they will ruin your blossoms and eat up all the pollen so that the pollinators can't come in and pollinate your plants. Another thing you can see with the cucumbers is the striped cucumber beetle carries a bacteria that causes bacterial wilt. You can see in these two pictures that parts of the plants are wilting, and that's due to the bacterial wilt that they've been infected with. So next we want to, going through the pyramid, determine the action threshold. How many pests are too many? And obviously the picture that I showed you of the cucumber beetle, there's too many on there. That is going to destroy your plant. So you have to know how many you have and how that's going to affect your plants. How much damage can the plant withstand? Maybe it can withstand a little bit of damage. Will the damage affect the crop yield? So you want to keep that in mind all the time. And do the pests transmit any disease to the plant? So these are the actions that we take for cucumber beetles on squash or cucumber. In the prevention step, what we're doing is in the fall before we put the garden to bed, is we're cleaning up all the garden debris to prevent overwintering. Early in the season, we're also disturbing the top inch of the soil to expose any eggs. We rotate squash to a different area of the garden because if those overwintering adult beetles are in the soil, we don't want them to pop up out of the soil in the spring and find the squash or the cucumbers right there. We want to give them a little bit of work to find them. We can plant decoys that are either purchased or grown. And as we mentioned before, we had the Hubbard squash. We grew those at home early in the season, late spring, so that we could put them out as early as possible, even a couple weeks before we actually put the seeds in the ground. We can use parthenocarpic seeds for cucumbers because those don't need to be pollinated, so they can be covered with insect barrier, and the insect barrier doesn't have to be removed for pollination. In the mechanical, physical, and natural step, we can use yellow sticky cards to attract the beetles. We can use insect barrier to prevent them from reaching the plants. We can pick off the insects and kill them. If we need to go to the chemical control step, we can use neem, spinosad, or pyrethrin. And again, only in early in the morning or at dusk. Next, after we take action, we evaluate our results. So we want to make sure we're keeping a journal or a logbook, documenting the date we saw the pests, what we observed, what actions we took, the results. And then after we have results, we determine what the next steps are. Maybe we've had adequate killing of the pests or avoidance of the pests, and we don't need to repeat, but steps can be repeated if necessary. Okay, moving along to another pest, the squash vine borer. The one way to ID the pest is to see it. And so this is a really beautiful beetle. It's almost 1 inch to 1.5 inches long, but you don't really see it very often because it flies very fast and it doesn't live for very long. The life cycle of this pest is that the adult moths emerge in late June, early July. So right around this time. And they have formed cocoons in the ground over the winter. The moths will lay eggs at the base of the squash and pumpkin plants. The eggs hatch in a week, and the larvae will bore into the stem of the plant, right at the soil level. The larvae feed through the center of the stem, blocking the flow of water. And you can see that in the top right. You can see the larvae in a picture where we have split the stem with a knife, with a sharp knife, and you can actually see the larvae in there. You can also see their frass, which is their the waste product of all of the squash plant that they're eating. It's a yellow, orangey sawdust-like, but it's wet sawdust. It's a mushy yellow. So the larvae feed for 4 to 6 weeks, then exit the stem and burrow 1 to 2 inches into the soil to pupate, and they'll remain there until the following summer. So actions that we take for the squash vine borer. We have prevention, which again is cleaning up garden debris in the fall to eliminate overwintering areas for the moth. Early in the season, disturb the top inch or so of the soil in order to expose any cocoons. Rotate the squash to a different area of the garden. Plant squash seeds later in June to avoid borer moth hatching time. And we've done that in the past. Under mechanical, we can use insect barriers to prevent the moths from landing on the plants, but you may need to remove them to allow for flowering or when they're flowering to allow for pollination. One thing that you can also do is you might notice how the plant is wilting. Usually the wilting of a squash plant that's been infected with a borer will gradually go up the stem of the plant. So the early or the first leaves will be the ones that wilt first. And if you go to the area of the stem where you see the wilting last, or the furthest away from the roots, and you split the stem there with a sharp knife, you might be able to see the borer there and extract it. Once you extract it, you can carefully put the stem back together, press it together, and put it under some soil. And hopefully it'll continue to carry water to the plant. Biological control, you can inject BT with Bacillus thuringiensis near the borer hole to kill the borers. We've tried that. It is a legitimate way of trying to kill them, but it's pretty tedious to do. Or you can try chemical. If you use insecticidal soap weekly and spray it at the base of the plant, you can smother any eggs that have been laid there. Okay, squash bug, another pest or frequently seen pest of cucurbit plants. The adult squash beetle is about 1 inch to 1.5 inches long. It's brown and has a hard shell. Those adults live through the winter in sheltered spaces. They emerge to find the squash plants to feed on and mate. They lay the clusters of eggs in early June under the leaf or on the bottom side of the leaf. The nymphs emerge in about 10 days, and those adults and nymphs will suck the sap out of the leaves. It causes the yellow and brown spots on the leaves that you see in the lower right-hand picture. You can also see on the left-hand side lower picture, you see the eggs. They're kind of bronze colored and they're in clusters underneath the leaf. And those will hatch into the nymphs that you see in the top right. They're tiny little gray insects that scurry very quickly. So actions we take for the squash bug, again, prevention, cleaning up the garden debris, rotating squash to a different area. Mechanical, use insect barriers to prevent those adult bugs from reaching the plant. You might need to take the cover off to allow for pollination. You can remove the eggs by squashing. You can kill the nymphs and adults by squashing. And here, this is a kind of interesting. It's a little departure from the other insects that we've talked about. Here with this insect, you can see the eggs, you can see the nymphs, and you can see the adults. So you have 3 different ways that you'd be able to detect this insect. If you need to, you can go to the chemical step, use neem or pyrethrin, but do it early in the life cycle when, especially on the nymphs, which are more vulnerable. Powdery mildew is also a pest. And it's the most common fungal disease in plants. To identify the pest, you can see in the pictures, they have like a sugary white coating on them. It's a fuzzy white fungus. Knowing the life cycle, you know the spores overwinter on as mycelium. So they overwinter as fungal threads, especially on dead plant material. So you're going to want to make sure you remove any part of your dead plants, any part of your squash, any cucurbit plants from your garden. The mildew develops in periods where there's warm, dry days and humid nights, somewhat similar to the weather we've been having. It spreads with wind and often starts as a white spot under the leaves, and it expands to move to the flowers and fruits. It needs a minimal amount of water or humidity to spread quickly. The whole leaves can take on a dull white cast, then shrivel and die, and so can the stems and the fruit. For prevention, again, clean up all garden debris in the fall to remove any mycelium. Choose disease-resistant plants or seeds. There are plants or seeds that do resist powdery mildew. You'll find them especially for cucurbits and also zinnias. Rotate the crops. Don't have them in the same place for at least 2 years. Plant in a sunny location with enough space to allow for good air circulation. Don't water overhead. Don't get the leaves wet. Mulch so that the disease that's in the soil doesn't splash up onto the leaves. Under mechanical steps, prune off any diseased leaves, fruit, or flowers, but don't compost. And make sure that you clean your tools before using them on other plants. If you need to go to the chemical step, horticultural oil, copper fungicide, sulfur fungicide, the Bacillus amyloliquefaciens, and neem are all effective on powdery mildew. Downy mildew is another mildew, but it's a little bit different than powdery mildew. So you want to make a distinction between those two. Downy mildew also has fuzzy sporulation on the bottom of the leaf, but the top of the leaf has yellow, red, or brown patches, almost looks a little bit like a mosaic. And then new growth is also stunted on those plants. So the spores travel by wind from the south. It's a water mold. It's not really a fungus, and they don't survive the winter in the Northeast. It develops during cool periods where there's humid weather, and it spreads with the wind. It needs a minimal amount of water or humidity, and it spreads very quickly and can cause rapid death of the plant. So what do we do for downy mildew? We can use prevention. There are disease-resistant seeds and plants available. Plant in a sunny location with enough space to allow for good air circulation. Again, don't water overhead or get the leaves wet. Remove weeds so that you're not blocking air circulation around your plants. Mulch so the disease doesn't splash up on the leaves. Under the mechanical means, prune off any diseased leaves. You have to do this really quickly as soon as you see them. Otherwise, it spreads very rapidly to the rest of the plant. Some chemicals that are more preventive, that control the spread once you actually first see it. You can use copper fungicide, the Bacillus amyloliquefaciens, or neem. Flea beetles. These are tiny little beetles that look like fleas. They can be different colors, but the ones we see at our garden are the ones that attack eggplant, radish, and bok choy. The adult flea beetle looks like a little black flea, and it jumps like a flea. And you can see in the lower left hand of the slide, the flea beetles are on this leaf. There are quite a few beetles on the leaf, and they're causing a lot of damage with a lot of tiny, tiny holes. Those tiny holes, though, coalesce and make bigger holes because those beetles, even though they're tiny, are voracious. The adults live through the winter in leaf litter. They become active in early spring. Females lay single or clusters of eggs in small holes in the soil or on the leaves of plants. The white larvae hatch from the eggs. They emerge as white adults and turn black the next day. I've never seen any white ones. They're always black when I see them. The adult flea beetles will create shallow pits in the leaves. So some of the actions, again, removing garden debris in the fall, disturbing the top of the soil to expose any eggs. That's early in the season before you plant. Rotate planting beds. Use companion planting to confuse insects. Again, if you plant eggplant or radish or pak choi with other plants, there may be a chance that the flea beetles will not find them. Mechanical means, you can use yellow sea cards to catch them. They're very attracted to the yellow. You can use insect barriers, like the netting that you saw in the pictures, but it needs to be removed when flowering to allow pollination. There are some biorational chemicals you can use. Diatomaceous earth, which is that substance that's made out of crushed sea creatures. If you put it on the soil, it'll dry out the larvae. Or you can spray the leaves with kaolin clay, and that irritates the adults. Tobacco hornworm. So these are seen occasionally in the garden also. The adults are gray-brown moths that are present at dusk, and you very rarely see those. They emerge in late spring or early summer and lay their eggs on the host plant. The host is usually a tomato plant. The eggs hatch in a week, and the larvae start feeding on the foliage. The larvae feed for 3 to 4 weeks, and they molt 5 times because they're changing size so rapidly. Once the larvae are fully grown, they'll burrow in the soil and overwinter before emerging as adults the following year. What you'll detect most quickly, probably when you have a tomato hornworm, is you'll see that your tomato plant is getting defoliated. These are very voracious eaters. They'll eat a whole plant in a few days. You might also see the frass, which is the waste product of that, the larvae, and it is green and moist pellets. So in order to monitor and detect it, you want to search the leaves for the larvae. They're very green though. They really blend in very well with the tomato leaves. So sometimes they're difficult to see, even though they're very large. You'll see heavy chewing damage on the leaves or on the fruit, the dark green droppings. They appear usually in small numbers, but even small numbers can really decimate a plant. Actions for the tomato hornworm. Mechanical, you can pick off the larvae and cut them in half. We usually leave the halves out for the birds to find so that they get fed. Under biological control, BT is effective on small larvae if there are many. But if there are only a few of these, you can just pick them off. Very easy to pick them off. Sometimes you'll see them with these parasitoid braconid wasps, egg cases or cocoons on the outside. These wasps are a natural enemy. They'll lay their eggs inside the body of the caterpillar, then they spin their cocoons on the surface. When you hand pick these, you can just put them in another area of the garden. You want to make sure that you give the braconid wasps some time to emerge as adults, because they're going to be doing good work in your garden. And if you put them away from the tomato plants, hopefully the birds will find them eventually. Slugs. Slugs is another voracious eater. Their life cycle consists of slugs overwintering. They are translucent and they hide in the soil and in sheltered areas. The eggs hatch in the spring and the juveniles start feeding on a wide range of weeds and crops. The adults are slimy and they're soft-bodied. They can grow from 1/4 of an inch to 4 inches long. They're typically tan or grayish brown. And they're nocturnal, so they might be difficult to find. They come out to feed at night when the conditions are cool and damp. Sometimes you'll find them during the day laying under the leaves of a plant that are against the ground. We find them frequently on lettuce. They love lettuce. They love hiding under the leaves. They like places that are cool and damp. They hide under weeds and rocks. Characteristic signs of damage are large ragged holes in the leaves and stems. And in this case, the veins are eaten too. Caterpillars do not usually eat the veins of the leaves, but slugs will. They'll also leave shiny trails of mucus. So actions for slugs, keep the proper spacing when planting. Don't crowd your plants too closely. Avoid moist, shaded habitat. Under mechanical, you can weed, that helps. You can use traps. One trap that's useful is putting beer in a shallow container, sometimes a deli container or a container of small sour cream. You can reuse that container, sinking it into the soil, flush with the soil level, and put beer in it. The slugs will be attracted to the beer and will fall in. You can also hand pick them early in the morning or dusk when they're active and put them in soapy water. Under chemical means, you can use diatomaceous earth and spread that on the soil. They'll crawl over it and get abraded and dry out. And you can use iron phosphate. Here I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure you avoid metaldehyde. Metaldehyde is also sold frequently as a slug killer, but it can be toxic to pets, dogs and cats. Aphids. So aphids are frequently seen in the garden also. The females lay their eggs toward the end of the growing season in the bark or bud scales of plants. They're soft, small-bodied insects. They're piercing and sucking insects. There are 4,000 different species or different colors and sizes. Here on the left-hand side, you can see them under the leaf of a rose. On the picture below, you can see yellow aphids that are crowded around on rosebuds, young rosebuds. To monitor them, you'll find clusters are common in the spring on tender new growth. You find them clustered on new buds, tender stems, young leaves. They suck the juices from the leaves and stems. Foliage will sometimes be pale with yellow spots. Sometimes the leaves will be curled or puckered. Flower buds, especially roses, can be damaged or distorted. The aphids exude a sugary honeydew. That's their waste product. And sometimes you'll see that on leaves. If they're feeding on a leaf above a leaf that you see that is sticky, you'll see that the honeydew is actually falling from them and onto the leaves below. Once that sugary substance is on the leaves, it will attract and grow a sooty mold, a black mold. So sometimes you'll see the black mold first. The shed skins are good indicators that damage was done by aphids, even if the insects are no longer seen. Actions for aphids, mechanical, physical. You can use a strong jet of water from your hose to knock them off the plant. You can cut off the leaves if they're heavily infested. Under chemical, you can use insecticidal soap or horticultural oil, and that will suffocate the insect. Or you can use neem. That's very effective also. Okay, we have a couple more pests to go through. So I'll continue moving right along. Here we have the Mexican bean beetle. We see these quite often on yellow beans. And you can see in the picture at the top, you see 3 different parts of the life cycle are visible to you. So you can detect it at all these stages. The adults live in the winter in sheltered places. They're copper colored with 16 black spots. They emerge to find the bean plants to lay their eggs on. You can see the cluster of eggs under the leaf. They're yellow, and the larvae are also yellow and have bristly spines on them. The adults are strong flyers, so it's very difficult to catch them and try to crush them. You can see the damage of feeding on the leaves. It skeletonizes the leaves. There's so many different holes that they cause kind of a lacy look in the leaves. They'll also feed on stems and flowers. Actions for the bean beetle. Prevention. I think we're beating a dead horse here. We want to make sure we clean the garden debris in the fall. Plant decoys, and these can be purchased or grown at home early in the season to attract the beetles with early flowers, and then pick the pests off of those plants, or pull up the plants and throw them away. Mechanical, use insect barriers to prevent the adults from reaching the plants, but they'll have to be removed when it's pollination time. You can remove the eggs by squashing. You can kill the larvae by squashing. You can use BT spray to kill the larvae since they're a type of caterpillar. And there are chemical means also. Kaolin clay can be sprayed to use, and that's used to deter egg laying because the beetle tries to land on the plant and it feels uncomfortable. They won't be able to lay eggs. Spinosad, neem, and pyrethrin also work. Okay, cabbage worms. Cabbage worms can be found on any plants in the cole family. That's cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, and radish. The pest larva look like a little green worm. The adults are a white butterfly with black spots. You can see them flitting around the garden near your broccoli or your kale, or sometimes around petunias. Cabbage worms spend the winter underground as a chrysalis. They develop into adult butterflies. The eggs are laid singly and are light green and elongated, stand upright on the leaf. The pupae are green, and the larvae are about 1 inch long. The larvae loves the center of the heads of these crops. Because it's tender in there, they have the young leaves. It chews ragged holes in the leaves and attacks flower clusters. And it also produces a lot of wet green frass. And sometimes that's the principal way you can detect them. So for the cabbage worm, there are some things that you can do to prevent or get rid of them. Using insect barriers prevents the adults from reaching the plants to lay eggs. And in all of these crops, pollination is not needed. So you can put the barriers on and avoid taking them off. You can remove the eggs by squashing, or you can kill the larvae by squashing or dropping them in soapy water. Under biological, you can use BT to kill the larvae, works best when they're small. Or chemicals, you can use spinosad, neem, or pyrethrin.
Want to take over the animals?
Yeah.
Okay. So animals, and from what we've heard thus far, you actually may have more issues with animals than we do. We have an 8-foot fence around the entire community garden where we're located, so the deer do stay out. In regards to rabbits, you can tell that you have a rabbit because you've planted something and it's come up to the point that it's that delicious tender age. We have done this with our beans one year. They're about 3-4 inches tall, and then we'll come along and every single one of them has been nipped off at a 45-degree angle. We've never had anything grow 2 feet high before the rabbit has taken over, because we do take action by immediately, as soon as we plant any of our rabbit loved crops, we immediately put a 2 to 3 foot 1-inch mesh chicken wire around our newly planted lettuce, chard, peas, beans, etc. We do not bury the fence down 2 to 3 inches to prevent the digging, especially since we have raised beds that are already surrounding that soil. We have had voles. They are mouse-like in size. They live under the ground. They prefer eating plant roots and bulbs and bark. They will leave nibble barks. We have grown sweet potatoes, and basically they've eaten almost the entire thing except for the shell. You can see their tunnels. They're a little bit like moles in that regard. And we have managed these by putting mouse traps out with peanut butter. The deer, you can tell they've been there by tearing or gnawing damage on pumpkin, squash, beans, lettuce, just about anything. You can also trick them not only with the 8-foot fence, that's not a trick, but if you have a less than an 8-foot fence, you can put like a fishing line above that, and just touching the fishing line will avert the deer because they're not understanding what's there. So, in summary, healthy plants are the most resistant to disease and insects, and will also shade out weeds. When you have good soil and good plant nutrition, then you're more likely to have those strong, healthy plants. Planting in the right place, at the right time, at the right temperature. And as Joanne said, on every slide that you saw, keep your beds clean of debris. If you keep weeds out, then you have more space between your plants, and the diseases cannot go from the soil to the plant as easily. Sanitize, remove the diseased plant parts immediately as soon as you can see them. Put them in black plastic bags, let them disintegrate with heat, put them in your garbage. Do not put these products in your compost. Watering properly, not overhead. We use a meter to decide when to water so that we don't overwater or underwater. Vigilance is really helpful. Honestly, we're not there every day, but we are also there many, many times during the week, and we're looking for the tiny little pinholes or the ragged edges or the frass, looking carefully at every type of plant, and then using multiple methods for dealing with each of the pests. Each one has its own strategies, as you saw. So now it's up to you. If you have a note paper, maybe you took some notes as we were going on. Is there anything that you think will be helpful for you in the future, this year, this fall, this summer, perhaps next spring? What are the things that you will be doing? What are those actions? We have some resources. Joanne has for you Good Bug, Bad Bug by Jessica Walliser, has excellent pictures and descriptions of both kinds of bugs that you will find in your garden. She also has, I think, nope, we don't have, there's another book, Week by Week Vegetable Gardener's Handbook by Ron Kojowski and his daughter Jennifer. And What's Wrong with My Vegetable Garden is one of my favorites. It describes each different type of plant and what to do about it, and follows basically what Joanne was just talking about. If you go to the UMass .edu site for resources, you will find many fact sheets on vegetable gardening. And also UMass has a newsletter called Hort Notes, clippings from the garden that you can sign up for, and they will send you their newsletter on, I think, a bi-weekly basis. Thank you for sharing this evening or the afternoon with us. And do you have any questions?
Go for it.
Hi, I didn't know if you could see my hand or not. So,
Hey, can you pull down the screen so we can see each other? Or stop sharing the slides.
There we go.
Yeah, thank you.
oh, great. Thank you. The big thing that I learned, and it's also a partial question because I mean, I recognize every one of those bugs that you talked about. Like, oh, I had that, I had them all. Was watering. I never realized that you don't water the tops of the leaves. When you water plants every day, you should just be watering the ground level, but not, because I always thought they needed and loved the nice moisture on top of them. I've been doing it wrong, no wonder.
Yeah. Yeah, that moisture just breeds the mildews.
That's what I've been getting, so much of that mildew, and I don't understand why, because I do everything else right, except now I do.
Mm,
You will probably still get the mildew. You likely will be able to control how much mildew you get. Maybe you will get less.
right. And
Right.
you can't stop the rain. So the plants will get wet with the rain and that might breed the mildew also. So we are seeing powdery mildew in our garden already just because of all the rain that we've gotten recently.
Right. And what you do about it is you try to remove some of the leaves and you use neem on them.
We haven't used any chemicals on them yet. We remove the leaves.
Okay, I could do that. Thank you so much. I mean, one other quick question that intrigued me was you talk about those yellow cards, those yellow sticky cards. Where do you get them? What are they? Where do you place them?
You might be able to find them at garden centers. I know we bought them on the internet because we could buy them in larger quantities. So they're usually a card about 6 by 4 inches, and they're yellow, bright yellow, and they have a covering on them that you pull off to expose the sticky part. And we use just sticks or small fencing material to put them at about the level of the plant in the garden. And hopefully they're attracted to the yellow of the sticky card before your plants actually flower, because they're attracted to the yellow color and also the smell of those the cucumber plants.
Do you do them regularly, preventively, or do you just wait to see if you're going to have insects?
We do them early in the fall because that tells us when the insects actually have arrived.
Spring.
Oh, yeah, sorry, spring.
In the fall.
Yeah, it's one of the first things that we do when we open the garden.
Wow, that's really cool to know. Thank you so much.
I think Becky had a question.
Yeah, so this is really interesting in terms of the specifics about these bugs. I'm very familiar with these bugs, but I never put the energy into figuring out their lifestyle and all that. What's the best thing to use to clean tools? Rubbing alcohol or dish soap or what?
We use alcohol. We're using isopropyl alcohol.
Okay,
It's quick drying.
yeah.
A lot of people recommend bleach. Bleach is okay also, but it corrodes metal. So if you're using metal tools, you want to rinse it after.
Yeah, that sounds more complicated.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you.
Plus, you don't want to bleach your clothes.
This was great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Oh, you're welcome.
Linda, Gwen, and Mary Beth, you guys are absolutely have to be veggie gardeners. Do any of you have any questions from these amazing experts that you want to take advantage of? Feel free to ask the question.
Can we have a copy of this slideshow?
Uh, yes, we can send that to the organizers as a PDF so that you can have it. Yeah.
I have a question about the cabbage moths. Is there a way to will they be attracted to the yellow sticky cards? Like, can I capture the adults?
No, no, those moths are not attracted to the yellow sticky cards, unfortunately.
Right.
And those moths showed up about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. We have a lot fewer this time because all the brassicas are covered, completely covered.
Perfect.
So there's a couple hanging around, but I mean in the past we've been inundated with those.
Yeah,
It's
it
just like
doesn't, it doesn't take very long either. You know, we saw, as Margery said, we saw those moths a couple of weeks ago, and our kale looked perfect. We had so many beds of kale that looked beautiful. And then all of a sudden, a couple days later, we see tiny holes, and we're like, okay, we can stand that.
yeah.
A couple of days later, the holes are bigger. Like, oh no, we better cover it right now.
Yes, and we have a couple of eggplants that have just not grown at all, and I think they must have those flea beetles on them, but nothing else seems to be affected. Is that like a favorite food of the flea beetle?
There are actually two types of flea beetle. One attacks brassicas and one goes for the solanaceous crops. I've never seen the brassica ones, but definitely as soon as we bring in an eggplant through the gate, the flea beetles in the soil start getting excited.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that
And
makes a lot of sense.
I mean, as soon as we put the eggplant in the ground, the beetles are emerging immediately. So we've so one of the things we do is immediately cover it. But the beetles can also be underground. So the kaolin is our most go-to used product, because the kaolin covers the leaves and makes the flea beetles crazy. They can't deal with it. It's very irritating to them. They forget to eat.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that we've used is a mycorrhizal supplement upon planting or transplanting. We've used the dry and we've used the wet. And what we've noticed this year, and we sometimes do experiments. So one bed we used mycorrhizal, one bed we did not. We are, and Joanne wasn't here for a couple weeks, and so we almost lost our eggplants. As soon as she came back and started using the kaolin, the eggplants in the mycorrhizal used bed are flourishing. They are normal size right now, and they are clean of beetles. The ones in the non-mycorrhizal bed are about half the size, and even though she's using kaolin, they're still struggling.
Mm. And
Okay.
those yellow sticky cards do work well for flea beetles. They're very attracted to those, but
Oh,
such voracious eaters, and there's so many of them, they just overpower the plants.
someone told me also that mustard, they like mustard best of all, that you can plant like a mustard decoy that attracts the flea beetle.
I inadvertently grow mustard. It's a community garden. Some flew over from a neighbor's patch.
Yeah.
I don't see a lot of flea beetles in the mustard. The
Mm,
mustard looks pretty healthy.
okay. Yeah, they do this definitely. They haven't attacked anything else in the garden. It's just the eggplant.
Yep.
Yeah, can you see the beetles on top of the?
Well, as soon as this is over, I'm going out to look at them because when you showed that picture that you showed was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what the
Yeah.
eggplant looks
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing we did try this year that we didn't have much success with is we bought some nematodes.
Yeah.
Nematodes are those tiny microscopic worms. They
Yeah.
eat the larvae and the eggs of flea beetles. And it really, I don't even know. I didn't even ask Margery. How do you feel were they different this year? The eggplant?
The eggplant, the flea beetles that when you have flea beetles and you go near them, you see the jumping right away.
Yeah.
You can't capture them. They're like fleas. They jump. And But this year they were dead. So, but they had already done some damage. So whatever the nematodes were supposed to do, they did not do.
What was the name of the mycorrhizal that you said you used?
I don't know the product name, but if you do your Google search mycorrhizal supplement, you'll come up with a dry or a wet. Did you get it online, Joanne?
Yes.
And you
Okay.
put it on the soil? You put it in the soil?
As we're planting, we put it in the little hole that we're gonna plant the eggplant in.
Okay,
We used it
okay.
for the tomato and we used it for peppers, anything that's going to be transplanted. But this was a glaring awareness of the difference of, I mean, many things. It could be soil, it could be light, it could be the companion plants that are in that area, but
Mhm.
definitely the mycorrhizal in one versus the other is glaring.
Great, great.
And when we pulled up the plants last year that we used the mycorrhizal on, they had a much more extensive root system than plants that weren't using it.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. This is so, so good.
Good.
Mary Beth, did you have any question? Because we can't see you and you're muted. It'd be an opportunity to ask if you do. And we'll assume that's a no. I can end on a slug story. After the heavy rains we had, was it just the day before or yesterday?
Mhm.
My wife went out, an avid gardener, but not veggies. Lots of flowers, plants, bushes, little trees, and whatever. She said that she killed 366 slugs.
Oh no.
Oh,
Yeah. So we're in a pretty,
Wow.
on the edge of the Robert Frost, a lot of trees around. The soil doesn't get a lot of sun that in that part of the yard,
yeah.
and it was about probably between, I'm going to guess, like 7 and 9 in the morning.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, early in the morning you'll find them.
You could spread the diatomaceous, if you know you're going to have slugs, you could spread the diatomaceous earth around those more susceptible plants, and it will cut up their bodies,
Mm, okay.
but may have to be reapplied again after rain.
Great. Judy, you want to wrap it up?
Yes, this was wonderful. I can't tell you enough how I appreciated everything that you taught us today. The slides were fabulous. The information, my head is just swirling, but I took lots of notes. So I'd like to thank you so much for doing this. I know it was your first time and you took a risk by doing this, but I think it paid off because all of us here really appreciated everything you taught us today. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome.
You're welcome.
And
Thank you.
Carolina, can I send you the PDF?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Gwen, so if you want to get a copy of that, just shoot
Yeah.
an email to Carolina or the Amherst Neighbors 01002 Gmail.
Okay,
And we'll get that in your hands.
okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much.
You.
Have a great evening, everybody.
Bye-bye.